Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sonic Chronicle. My name is Owen, and today I'm back with another episode in my Casually in Conversation series. Today I have a presentation for you, an interview with the singer-songwriter Podge Lane. Podge has been writing music for the last 10 years. Podge has been releasing albums since 2021, so he's released one a year, effectively, since he started releasing them. But before that, he had released a number of EPs, which was great, and that's what we'll talk about quite a bit, actually, over the course of this interview. We talk about his series of EPs called People Break, which is a very interesting listen. It really sets up what he goes on to do over the course of the albums. But listen, there's going to be snippets cut in over the course of the interview, and we talk about lots of stuff. We talk about production, we talk about writing, we talk about the idea of learning other people's songs and what that's used for. We talk about, in a lot of ways, some philosophical stuff as well. But yeah, it's very interesting. He's a lovely, lovely guy. It was great to have a chat with him. He seems to have really enjoyed the interview as well, which was nice to hear. I hope that you all enjoyed this interview as well. If you like what I do, please do like this channel. Please do hit that subscribe button. That helps me out greatly. And of course, leave any comments that you might have on the interview in the comments section below. For now, though, I am going to leave it to Podge to speak for himself over the course of this interview. I hope you enjoy. Yes, thank you very much for joining me for a chat. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to chat to me. I just want to chat about music with you. Is that all right? That cool?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm luckily very interested in that subject.
Oh, that's good.
If you went with economics, I'd kind of have, thoughts, but music works.
We'll not talk about the budget. Sound. So, do you mind if I call you Podge, or would you prefer Porrick or Podrick? Are you a Porrick or a Podrick guy?
I'm a Podrick, with the G at the end instead of the C, as some people ask. But I don't know. I was never a big nickname guy growing up, and then when I got the nickname Podge, I was like, I kind of like this. I like this. This is a good one for me. So like, I kind of know if I get Podge, it's a friend. If it's Podrick, it's usually family. If it's Podrick Dennis Lane, then I've done something wrong.
Then you've done something wrong. Yeah, that's your mother screwing up the stairs or something.
Yes.
or your partner.
Yeah. Usually I am at fault, so.
Generally, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'll just call you Podge. That's all right.
Perfect.
So you're from Cork. Do you mind if I ask you, is it rural Cork or Cork City?
All right, we're going to get into the long history because I know there will be people screaming at this. I'm actually originally from Kerry, so I was born in Kerry, then grew up in New York, and then ended up moving with my family when I was about 11 to just rural Cork, but now I'm living with my partner up in Cork City. So
there are questions here.
There are a lot of questions. I just know that like people from my life who know from back in Kerry are like, he's not from Cork, and people in Cork are like, he's from Kerry, and people in America don't remember because I was 10.
Yeah, you remember that though, right? Like that was like formative years.
Oh, right? 100%. Like that's, again, everyone does ask about how I have a very neutral accent of everywhere. So like that's kind of been both my burden and my gift, where like when I go to America, they're like, you're Irish. And when I go to Ireland, they're like, you're American. I'm like, cool, I've got a bit of everything. But like I went to school from the age of about 6, I think, until 11 in America. So like I remember it really well.
How do you think that's impacted your viewpoint on things generally? Like, do you think it has had an impact on your viewpoint on things?
100%. I think, again, it's that feeling of like, it doubles down on the feeling you have as a musician, where as musicians, we're normally like, oh, I feel a little bit lost, a little bit outside of the loop. Add in the fact that wherever you go, you're technically a little bit different. So like, again, like I said, growing up in America, I was Irish. Growing up in Ireland, I sound American. So it's kind of, it amplifies that feeling as a songwriter, being like, I don't feel completely in the loop of everything. So that kind of influenced me to kind of, I wouldn't say fully outsider music, but just knowing what it feels like to be kind of like on the cusp, in the middle, not really there.
So is that, well, I presume it's not, but do you think that has impacted your musical tastes? And is that where the love of, like, I'm not saying that New York is this big hub for country music or anything like that, right? But
Yeah.
do you think that has kind of impacted that? Like that the Americana style at the very least has kind of seeped in via osmosis through that link? Or
Yeah, I
is
think
it
there's definitely an edge to that. Like, I guess when I started playing music and singing music, what I love every kind of music. Like, I am genuinely a sponge for so much music. I actually
yeah,
annoy friends when they're like, "I've shown you a new band." I'm like, "I went to see them 2 years ago," or
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I know their side project. But I guess when I started singing, I kind of, because I had the neutral accent, a lot of people think country music is just that really southern twang, but
yeah,
it's more a kind of mixture of everything. It's got that Irish influence, it's got this, whereas I didn't feel comfortable singing a trad song or singing a Shannon song, mainly
sure,
because I can't speak Irish either. Because growing up in America,
sure.
when you come back, they're like, too late,
Too
boat
late. Yeah,
sailed,
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
do this. So I guess in that way, it really did. It also, like, my love of country music comes from three places mainly. It's my grandparents' music. Like, I used to always listen with my granddad to Johnny Cash, so that's where it kind of started
Hmm.
forming. I guess the kind of American influences, like going to visit relatives over there and seeing the kind of the country musicians you wouldn't hear about necessarily on the radio.
Hmm.
And then third was, unfortunately and amazingly, my parents are like super sponges for music, but not in the way that I get excited about it. In the way that when you're a kid and you're trying to rebel, I would be like, I'm into Nirvana now. And my mom would be like, cool, I've got the like original
Yeah,
cassette
yeah,
from back
yeah.
in the day. And like, I'd be like, I'm into Eminem now. And my dad would be like, cool, I have the Marshall Mathers LP. I'm like, no, this doesn't work.
This is
So
my music
yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like it just kept and like even then I'd do the modern stuff. I was like, I'm really into Katy Perry and pop, and my mom would be like listening to it. I'm like, no, this doesn't work. Finally, I found like certain country musicians, like even Bob Dylan's like Nashville stuff, and
Hmm.
they were like, oh, I don't really like this. I was like, cool, that's mine.
That's mine
So,
now. Yeah, okay.
which then turns into years later, they started listening to it and loving it. So I'm like, well, at least I got the rebellious years.
But you kind of like, I suppose, in some ways, kind of like fostered that as well in them,
Exactly.
right? You
Yeah.
know, and I will say as well that like having listened to like your discography extensively in the lead up to this, like all of those influences kind of come across here, right? Across all of the albums, right? Like there's like I've got notes right on your
Awesome.
albums, right?
Cool.
Like there's stuff in there like that sounds like an outer monologues, right? There's
Mhm.
an awful lot of piano, right?
Yeah.
And at times it sounds an awful lot like nearly saloon style, piano kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, on across all of the albums, there's quite discordant sounding guitar at different times, right? Like almost like it's a jazz track,
Yeah.
right? But it can't be a jazz track because of the beat behind it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and across all of them, there's like freeform style, like guitar playing across all of them, which I found to be very, very interesting. Even like some stuff across like the older stuff, like even on People Break, there's Pink Floyd sounding stuff on there. There's Hey Bartender, right?
Yeah.
That song like really reminds me of stuff by the Shangri-Las or the Ronettes, right?
Cool.
Like really, really widely varied like musical styles across all of the albums.
Hey, bartender, can you fix me one more? I've got somewhere I don't wanna be. Music's loud and this place is crowded, and you know that I can't see. It's right in front of me on a southern city night. Hey, bartender, is there anything strange that can occupy my time? Are you new in town? Do you
That kind of like brings me on to another point here, right? That you have a self-described mammoth record collection. Um, Tell me about that.
Cool. First of all, on the notes, thank you. That I was not expecting to hear People Break brought up. Like, I genuinely was like, whoa. But just hearing like the kind of styles, that's so cool to see that come across because, again, even with my record collection, I do describe it as mammoth. It is everything I've ever loved because I guess back to your point on like the kind of American connection, the being the outsider and things, I never felt that kind of pull of you're in this genre, you have to do this. The only reason I describe my music as alt country is because country music is where I started and where my heart is, and alt is just for me the figurehead of it starts in country and it will go everywhere in between. So like my record collection now, if I was just to describe yesterday I had the night off, what I listened to was Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. Thank You for Your Service, We've Got It From Here by Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, wow.
Jack White's Boarding House Reach and Daniel Johnston's first album on cassette. So like I don't get stuck by borders. I love all these kind of music. When I started playing music, I was 17, which
Yeah.
now I'm looking back and I'm like, that's still young. But when I was that age, getting into music and picking up a guitar for the first time, singing for the first time, I didn't have I grew up playing this music, so I have to do this. So while writing wise, I would always stick with country, 13 to 15 was my rap phase. And I went through heavy, like very, very old school rap, everything back to Slick Rick, all the way up to industrial rap, like Clipping. Then around 15, I started moving to like the rock and the pop, and then slowly it became folk music for me. So even when I'm writing these songs, I don't write in a way that I go, this has to be done to tape, this has to be done with this kind of guitar playing. Everything I kind of make up as I go along. It's all down to what feels the best for me. I don't have a stigma against sample instruments or VSTs, anything like that. If it sounds good or it sounds like what I'm hearing in my head when I'm writing, that's perfect for me. And I think that's something that I try to like show people in music, where when I did People Break, a lot of people knew that I made that album just with an interface, with a couple of friends and everyone playing their own parts. And I was kind of always told, you should go to a studio, you should get it mastered like this, you should get it done like this. The guitar doesn't sound very Beatlesy, or this doesn't sound very Mac DeMarco-y. Whereas once I started to just move into doing everything myself, say for piano on Outer Monologues, which was a piano player called Peter O'Sullivan, who we gelled so well on that album because I would turn around to him and just be like, play it like if Randy Newman was a cowboy. And he's just like, oh, brilliant, and like would do it. But say for Peter and my wonderful partner, Rebecca, who would do the backing vocals, having the freedom of going, oh, I can make that sound like whatever I want with my limited skills is so much more freeing than hearing someone play what they think an instrument should sound like on that song.
I agree. Like this whole idea of, you've recorded this and it's pretty good for a home recording. Like I'm fine with that, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm happy enough, right? As long as I can, go out and like get it mastered or whatever. Because the first time that I went off and got something mastered, like the guy came back to me like within the hour going, hey, and you could hear on the phone, he was nearly nervous. And I think I might have told this story before on the show, but I'll bore people again. But he came back to me and he said, look, I just need to know you to know that I don't think these are the best recorded pieces of music that I've ever heard. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I've just recorded them in my room. Like I don't expect them to be the best recorded pieces of music. I just need you to master them. And he's like, okay, great. as long as you know,
as long as we're aware,
that's great. That's great. That's fine. Yeah. Exactly, right? Because it comes back to the old adage of like, I don't mean to be too crude about it, but crap in and crap out, right? But as long as you're happy with the output, I don't think it really matters too much.
Yeah, I agree with that point. Like for me, like I've said a lot of times in interviews, I could have spent the last 8 years making a very, very perfect album that was produced pristinely. But if Taylor Swift drops the same day as that album, then that's 8 years down the drain. Whereas I have made all the albums and told the stories that I want to tell. So I'm not looking back going, how did this album do metrics wise? Does this one have the sonic quality of the last? I go, I've told the story I want to tell, and I'm proud of the body of work I've created. But I think also, and this is a funny story that I'm excited now to tell with the album being out a month, I think there's a perception as well to that home recording thing. When I made Outer Monologues and Common Country, I had written on certain websites that it was all recorded at home. And certain people who shall remain nameless told me I would make so much better music if I went to a studio and got it mastered professionally, because I master my own stuff, everything. I'm very thorough with that kind of stuff. When I made Multiple Dead Ends, I started just putting out this theory, saying it was all recorded in Tape Studios. Now, Tape Records is the name of the record label that I created, making my music.
Right, okay.
I put down that it was Tape Studios, and a few of those same people came back to me and said, I love that you have a band behind you, and I love that it's mastered professionally. You can hear the difference.
Wow.
Who is the bass player and who mastered it? I would love to contact them. Which was a great moment for me, because nothing changed in my way of making the music other than the fact that this album has no one on it. It is completely just me on every instrument.
Sure.
Again, the first two albums we had Peter on piano and Rebecca on backing vocals. This one, I just want to challenge myself by doing every detail of it. So to hear people go, see, you finally went with a mastering engineer and you got it done in a professional studio. I was like, so this is all completely down to where your brain thinks this music is coming from.
100%. Like, I mean, it's the same thing with, like, you know, the names on headstocks of guitars, right? It's exactly the same thing. You know, people's perception of like the sound or like the quality of the music that you're making completely changes depending on that as well, right?
That's why genuinely, I was doing like press photos and shows. I used to tape the name on the guitar so that people did not know what the name was on my guitar. And the amount of more messages I got saying, I love that guitar, what brand is it? Rather than when I had it untaped, it was, oh, have you ever thought about upgrading to this brand?
Yeah.
Like, most of my electric guitars are Thoman brand and Harley Benton. It's not out of a love for the brand. It's what sounds the best for what I want to create.
100%. But also, like, Harley Benton guitars are quality. They're
They're
tend to be
fantastic,
quality.
yeah.
Right? They tend to be a fantastic quality of guitar.
This is not sponsored.
Not sponsored. Not sponsored. Unless, Holman, if you wish to sponsor my show, get in touch.
See how I helped? You're welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks. You wouldn't get that from a professional studio recorded artist. Like that.
No.
But what I will say though is, like, despite it not being recorded in a studio, I do think that Multiple Dead Ends is definitely the most sophisticated of the three albums, right? In terms of its production.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
I'd agree. I put a lot of production work into it. I think the thing that helps me with the production size is I listen to a lot of music, so I always have a reference for what I want it to sound like, even if it's a very obscure one. I was just like going through some notes, just thinking about this interview today, because I was recording some new stuff this week, and I was looking through the mixing notes for, I think it was Down, and I wrote in those notes, I wanted to have the thump of a Q-Tip beat, but if Q-Tip was a country musician in the 70s, and then I just had a note underneath saying, still sounds like Q-Tip in the 60s, move it to the 70s. Like, for anyone else who walked in, that's the scribbling of a madman, but in my brain...
It is.
Oh no, it absolutely is.
I've been here before, maybe once or twice more. It's never a bore when you're dragging me down, down, down. When I say never again, it always depends on who's looking in when you're dragging me down, down, down. Well, it was so much fun the first time I came back around, and then you knocked me to the ground.
But in my brain, that makes sense. And number two, the other big thing is knowing when to leave things alone. Like with the first two albums, I mixed even more than I did on this. Whereas with this one, I knew, okay, that sounds exactly like what I wanted to sound like. I am not going to EQ any instruments anymore. I am
Mm.
happy with what I've created here.
Yeah, like the thing with EQ is like you can, exactly as you said, like over EQ stuff to the point
Yeah,
where it doesn't sound like an instrument anymore.
yeah,
Um, and then it's just like, well, what's the point?
exactly.
Like you lose so much brightness. Like, yeah, like you can like leave the top end, like
Yeah,
the brightness of those frequencies,
yeah,
intact. But then someone will come back to you and they'll go, oh, well, there's no point in keeping that in there, right?
yeah.
It's not an exact science. It is purely your ear,
Yeah.
right? Where did you learn to produce?
Well, I learned in college. I went to the Cork School of Music, and before
Mm.
that, I went to grade school Coláiste Stefan Nefa for my PLC course in music. I
Right.
went through both one after the other. So I learned a lot from that. I also learned from just trying things, honestly. I know this is going to sound funny. College was incredible, and I learned so much from like sound engineering courses in college, but I also learned a lot from people in those courses telling me, have you checked out this YouTube video? Have you checked out this one?
Oh yeah.
And just honestly reading and things like that. Going back to your point on the EQing and talking about like where I learned to do all of this, I have a quote that sticks in my head every time I go down that rabbit hole of mixing from Jeff Tweedy from the band Wilco. I have
Mm.
his book on how to write one song, and then his earlier book. I think it's from the first book. Yeah, but the quote is, if you're spending too much time EQing the kick drum, stop right there, because all you're doing, you're not helping the masses. Now I'm paraphrasing it. You're not helping the masses. All you're doing is making the song sound better to the sound engineers of the world, and they
Yeah.
already hate your music.
and and that's not untrue.
No,
Like
exactly.
that's the thing. Like they were immediately going, "Oh no, that should have done." Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like people who are snobbish about stuff will always be snobbish about stuff. That like you'll never be able
Yeah.
to please them, right?
And again, back to our point on genres, it's the same people having barriers for genres. They have barriers for sound
100%.
engineering. They have it for performance, for what guitar you use. Like that's what I always like to tell is like just use what you use. Like I get a couple of laughs every time someone goes, "Do you use Pro Tools or do you use Logic?" And I go, "Reaper." I use Reaper. I've always used Reaper to record because it's what I learned on. And honestly, I always root for the underdog. Every time someone would go, "You have to go to Pro Tools. It's so much better. You have to go to this." I'm like, Reaper's my home.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir. I'm still rocking Audacity, man.
Hell yeah.
Like I learned on Audacity. Well, I briefly used Adobe Audition,
Mm.
but Audacity all the way.
Yeah.
Although I did start using Reaper in order to get, because I couldn't figure out how to get this plugin into Audacity, so I have Reaper specifically for this plugin to generate drum beats. And
Oh,
that's
very
all it
nice.
is. That's all I use it for. And then
Yeah.
I export that, and then I pull it into to Audacity, and then off I go. But I only started using drum beats recently, um, because I only recently figured out how to use them.
Fair.
And you mentioned um, when it came to recording, was it Outer Monologues? You
Hmm.
started with the beat, above everything
Yeah.
else.
Wow.
Um, I do research. I do
That's
research.
I'm feeling very Nardwire-ish right now, where I'm like, how did you know that?
I look into bits and pieces.
Nice.
But so how did that change your process? Like, was that challenging for you, or did it actually completely rework things for you, or did you always kind of have a sense as to what you wanted the beat to be, and this was just the next step in that?
No, it completely rewired my brain when it came to music. Before I made Outer Monologues, it was just like right before the pandemic happened. I had made People Break, and I had made a slew of EPs and live albums and things like that. And I just felt burnt out. I felt like I couldn't write anymore and I wasn't
Mm.
enjoying it. And one thing I had always done with those albums was never use samples, never use like drum beats, anything like that. And then when you're home during the pandemic, I was just listening to a lot of music that I loved growing up, and the more I listened, the more I went, I want to recreate that. Now I'm not a good drummer. I play drums on some albums. I play certain drum beats on certain songs, but drummer wise, I'm very unsophisticated. So I just started downloading samples and just like writing over them, and that's how I made Weak Beneath the Knees. And the process with that was kind of annoying because I'd write a song and then go, ooh, the drum beat doesn't fit. I guess I have to leave that go. So when I made Outer Monologues, I was like, this is my first album. I want to challenge myself as a writer. I just like started with all the beats. I would completely just work out, okay, this is what the drum is going to sound like before anything else gets recorded. Then I would play the bass line. Then I would start writing words because I was kind of going from it from the aspect of an angry, insular person going, okay, I don't have a band. I guess I'll be my own band. So I'd make the drums, I'd make the bass, and kind of almost argue with myself going, that drum needs to change. That thing here needs to change. It completely transformed how I'd write songs because it became more about what's driving rather than just writing the song going, that's perfect. I need everything to work around me. I would write these songs, make the beat, and then go, ooh, the drummer decided to do something way different than I did, even though I'm the same person. Like the best example is the song The Party on that album. That has kind of an old kind of Beatles jangliness to it that's kind of swung and it's slightly off. When I wrote that, that was a straight, just like 4 to the floor, like completely rocker, just dun 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 dun. And when I found this drum and just like started working around that, I was like, this is for a different song completely. And then I started humming the melody to The Party, and I was like, oh, this could work. And what happened with a lot of the songs, it changed the meaning of the song for me in the album. And I mentioned this way too much, but I love concept albums. So like I was writing these songs, finishing the beat and going, that's a perfect beat for song 4. So from working that out in my head, I would go, these lyrics have to match where we are in the story. So it became less of writing 10 songs, putting a band behind them and making them an album, and became more, okay, this jigsaw piece has to fit into this part of the puzzle. So the lyrics have to match up, and ooh, the lyrics match up here, but the beat doesn't. We've got to find a beat that matches what song 7 would be on like a Bob Dylan album or a Bruce Springsteen or a Fiona Apple album.
It almost sounds like you're describing you sitting down and like writing lyrics by cutting words out of a magazine and then assembling them on a sheet in front of you, you know, except you're doing that for every part.
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's how I feel about it. I'm so of the mindset that like, I want to be challenged writing. I don't want to sit down and go, yeah, same album as the last one. That's why I give myself like little rules like that. So that album, the rule was none of the songs can have the drums rewritten for them. The song has to rewrite to the drums or to the bass line. And so
I presume that had required an awful lot of reworking and retooling during the process. So was that quite time consuming?
Yeah, I didn't sleep a lot during that. There was a lack of sleep. Again, I always have to bring up, but my amazing partner, Rebecca, she would come downstairs and be like, is the song done? I'm like, no, it doesn't exist anymore. There's a new song. She'd be like, okay, do you need a cup of coffee, bud? I'd be like, yes, please. But the rewrites went on for less time than it seems like going back. I think it was like 4 months in all it took from writing the start of The Party to finishing the last song. Like The Party was the very beginning of the album and the first thing I wrote where I went, this is what I want my first album to be. And from that, it took about 4 months of just constant rewrites and works. And I'd be just in the middle of like lunch and just go, oh, I could make it more like the bass line from this other album. So it was, again, my record collection coming back to me and going, you should try what they did on this song.
Yeah. That's mad. Sorry.
No, it is. I'm proud of it.
I work very slowly, frankly, right? But I'm definitely the kind of person who, like, I take my time when I ruminate on things. I let things kind of steep a little bit more than anything, right? That I'll put down something and then I will put it away. I'll put it away for a while and I'll come back to it later, right? And then give it another listen and go, no. It either needs to be completely redone or like this bass line doesn't work, that needs to be ripped out and I'll put this one in instead, or I'll sit down with the bass and kind of go over it again. But that's kind of how I do things. And you mentioned that like you have different rules for different albums, and that was
Mhm.
the one for Outer Monologues.
Yeah.
So is your way of working for Common Country Misconceptions and your way of working for Multiple Dead Ends completely different to that one again?
It when I made Outer Monologues, I threw out the rule book and made a brand new set. I think then for those two albums, I kind of added new rules or took away things. Like
Okay.
there's an overarching rule on the first two albums on Outer Monologues and Common Country Misconceptions that people kind of missed, and I think that's why Multiple Dead Ends feels as big as it does. Electric guitars were banned from those two albums.
Yeah. Like,
So that gave me like the ultimate challenge. But then when it came to Multiple Dead Ends, it was almost like cathartic release of like, finally, I can use this thing again. I can make it sound bigger than life.
so on Common Country Misconceptions, like as the name suggests on the album, there are a lot of country sounds on it.
Yeah.
There's slide guitar on Battle Wounds. So
Mhm.
was that done on acoustic then?
That was done on Resonator, unplugged completely,
Gotcha.
just like into
No,
my
sorry,
so.
that wasn't the gotcha
No, no,
moment.
no,
Sorry,
not at all. No, because I love when people ask that because that's the first thing people go. They're like, "That sounds electric." I'm like, "It's not," and that was the challenge because
Sure.
when I wrote that immediately, I was like, "Cool, electric guitar plugged in, bit of
Mhm.
distortion. Let's get that slide." And I was like, "Still have this rule, still
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
make it work." So like that took way longer than expected because it was just like these mics just plugged in and getting closer and closer and almost to the point that you could hear like my fingernail going off it because
100%, yeah.
I wanted to have that large feeling of, oh, I just pressed a distortion pedal,
Mhm.
which meant then when I got to the next album it was kind of like, ooh, I put away the sweets until Christmas and now I can eat the sweets.
Yeah, because like when you record like that, like an acoustic instrument like that, like it's not like you can just crank the volume on it to get the
Exactly.
distortion, right? Because then
Yeah.
you're picking up everything, right? You're putting up the volume of everything in the room.
Yeah.
And I don't care what people say, silence has a sound, right?
100%.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of why I was like, when I listened to it, I was like, is that a lap steel? And then I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's definitely not a lap steel. Lap steels are way too difficult to play, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that you couldn't do it with a bit enough time, right? But
No, no.
you know, to have access to one as
Yeah.
well is also
Yeah.
a challenge, right? So I was like, oh, that's some like that's just clearly some lovely slide guitar. And then
Yeah.
when you brought up no electrics on it, I was like, yeah, that now that you mention it, that makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
then what's the crack with the slide guitar?
Mhm.
And you mentioned as well about your partner on like being very, very patient and the like, and her doing
Mhm.
backing vocals.
Yeah.
Um, when I was listening to Outer Monologues, I thought like I actually have a note here. Who did the backing vocals on the party? Could definitely have been used more.
Yeah.
You
She
know,
is incredible. Genuinely, like just as a musician, I've always told her that like if I didn't like how her music sounded, it didn't matter us being in a relationship, I wouldn't use it.
100%.
She's like she is a better vocalist than me. I've always told her that, and she's one of my favorite singers out there. It was to the point that like when I used her on the party, I was like, oh, this is her song now. This is 100% her
It is.
song.
Sorry, but
And
yes, it
no,
is.
no,
Yeah.
100%. And like her vocals on that, even when we do it live, was just like out of this world. And it became, again, that's why there's so much less backing vocals on Common Country and then less again on Multiple Dead Ends. Not out of a place of jealousy, if that's what it sounds like, but out of a place of if I'm going to tell these stories, I need to challenge myself to be able to emote the way she does. So, like, she
Mm,
writes music as well. And when I watch her write, I'm like, cool, you can do the thing with the voice that I can't.
yeah.
She's just got, like, and she knows what to do with the songs. Again, it's a case of I brought in that song to her and went, I didn't tell her, these are the notes you're singing. You're going to sing this arpeggio here. You're going to sing this. I just went, what feels nice in this song to
Yeah.
you? And this is my proudest moment. Those vocals that she did on that song and also on I'll Be All Right, brackets any day now,
Yeah.
those vocals are all first take.
I was
Like
gonna say,
very first take. Listen to the song, went, cool, put up the mic, and then that was it.
um, I'll be all right any day now. I think is one of the highlights for
Oh
me. To
wow.
be honest with you,
Thank you.
I think it's a great little song.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's great songs across all the albums.
Yeah.
But like like I've identified highlights on different records, but anyway.
No, I really appreciate that. And one last thing on that is I like to use instruments, or in this case, people on albums as part of the story. So the story of that album is me looking back on like 18, 19-year-old me and seeing like what I was doing at the time and kind of almost hands over the eyes, just being like, you're an
Bit
idiot.
cringy,
Why
like,
are you
yeah.
doing this? Why are you acting like no one understands you just because you love Father John Misty? That's not the reason. You're just,
Yeah.
please stop. So having her voice in those places was also a methodical thing of any song that she's on is almost like it's almost like the gods in Hercules, the
Oh,
three women. It's
yeah.
it's just the way of being like, let's tell you what you're doing from high up on the mountain, like what's going on here in the actual track.
Oh, funnily enough, they are the muses in Hercules,
Ah,
right? That's
nice.
what they are.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah.
But to come back to talking about them as concept albums,
Mm.
right? Like obviously you identified what Outer Monologues was there.
Mm.
I thought that I saw a tweet or some kind of message or some kind of post at some stage about the three albums kind of defining like three eras of your life, like a past, present, and
Yeah.
future, or past, semi-past, and the present with, a
Yeah.
kind of a bleak outlook potentially of the future, somewhat. Um,
I guess some people can read it. I've had people read that last album in so many different ways, but the concept, and like I just wrote it down on a piece of paper in 2020, like before I started the three albums. I was just like, I was looking at different artists I like, and even over to movies like the Cornetto trilogy, and then I was going back to like, kind of like Eminem's certain like Relapse Recovery, all those kind of
yeah.
ones, and then so many different folk artists do it. Like people don't realize Johnny Cash, half of his like discography is concept albums on like concepts that you wouldn't believe he wrote about.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, like he's sorry,
yeah,
I'll just wax lyrical briefly about that.
yeah,
Like when it comes to like Johnny Cash, like I wouldn't necessarily say that like it's concept albums, and maybe I could be completely wrong about this, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's concept albums in the sense of that people would potentially understand them as being, where it's like this big overarching story
yeah,
necessarily, and more to do with the concepts of society that he exists in at any given
yeah.
time. You know,
Yeah,
um,
there are definitely albums like that. I think the Baron and like albums like that where he's like just writing about train songs or just writing about songs about Native Americans. That album
mm,
is unbelievable. And then even the live albums to an extent, San Quentin being my favorite album of all time, that to me is a concept album because the concept is here are the disenfranchised. I am going to sing these songs for them. I am going to let them be part of the album. They're, like you said, silence has a sound. Their silence during certain lyrics that are hitting them in the chest is
mm.
a part of the song where I'm going, oh my God, he just got all the inmates to be quiet during that section. So
Sure.
that to me has a concept to it as well.
Mm. It's interesting that it's songs to the disenfranchised about the disenfranchised,
Exactly.
from a man who was largely disenfranchised himself
Exactly.
by his own society generally.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, what are the other concepts then
Oh yeah.
after Outer
So
Monologues?
so what I wrote in 2020 just on this piece of paper was the L trilogy. So it was the first album was Life, so specifically what I was doing at a younger age, looking back on it now with a bit of wisdom. The second album was Love. So after you write that album, you can't really talk about your awkward teens for a while. You have to kind of let that go. So I kind of sat down and went, what does a angry singer-songwriter have to write about when like he's in a great relationship, he's really happy with his life,
It,
everything's going good.
it's tough to write songs, man. It's
It's
tough.
it is, but it also challenges you to write about different things. So like
Yeah.
whereas the stories on the first album were, am I ever going to find love? Someone broke my heart, someone's not being truthful. The second album worked into this, well, here's, when you have a fight in a relationship and it's completely your own fault, but you can't admit it, so you're pushing through. It's Paradise. Paradise was the first song I wrote on this album, and it always made me laugh once I wrote it. This concept of like the first song after the angry album being like, you'll be okay any day now, is like, I'm so angry. Just another day in paradise. Everything is incredible right now, and that is so annoying.
Also, you can
Uh,
definitely hear the Johnny Cash influence on Paradise.
oh
The
yeah.
bass line is effectively a walk the line. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, 100%. And that was, again, the name Common Country Misconceptions is from the two big misconceptions of the album, which is country music has to be about she broke my heart and ran away. And the
In my
songwriter,
truck specifically. Yeah.
exactly. And the songwriter has to be the macho cool guy. He can't be the guy on Battle Wounds who's being like,
Mm,
please let me talk in this conversation at some point and stop just
mm.
telling me about your life. Let me like talk as well in this, like the nerdy guy who's like, oh man, I can't get a word in edgewise. You don't really see that with the silhouette of the cowboy hat and the gun.
That is true. That is true.
So that's again the common country misconceptions is just like country music can be whatever you want it to be. It can be the singer going, I'm in love. What do I have to talk about anymore? And kind of by the end of the album, just being like, it doesn't matter. Just be happy with what your life is doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like, it's similar to, um, what's his name? The singer who, like, he's a country singer who, Orville Peck. Orville
yeah,
Peck, he's gay, right?
I
Isn't
love
that the
him.
thing?
He's an
And
incredible artist.
yeah, he's very interesting. Like, even as a
Mhm.
character, he's very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and like that in and of itself, him being, you know, him being gay, right?
Mm.
A member of the LGBT community,
Yeah.
um, is nearly kind of, it probably is, flying in the face of what people would expect country to be as well, right? That is
A hundred
another
percent.
country
And like as
misconception.
an artist, watching him grow and become like the artist that Willie Nelson is doing a duet with, it's
Mm,
kind of this moment of he is just unabashedly being himself as an artist while also not giving you his full self with the mask.
yeah,
I love those little details in a song and in a story where you're kind of going, this is as much of myself as I'm going to give you so you understand who I am, but I'm also taking away your ability. Because we see it in pop music a lot. If someone writes honestly about like their breakup or what they're going through, Twitter will find out every detail about them. Whereas with Orville, he kind of almost with the mask is telling you this is the distance.
mm,
I'm going to tell you what's going on. I'll be there to help, and I'm going to help the LGBTQ community in country music and bring us all up. But I'm also not going to let you in on every detail of my life because he
yeah,
started as a drummer in like punk bands and things like that, and was very secretive about loving country music, and that resonated with me because
mm,
none of my friends listen to country music. And
yeah,
growing up in a family that'll listen to anything, you kind of come out of it going, hey, let's listen to this song. And people going, no way. And now country is on the rise, and people who once told me they don't like it are now telling me how much they like it, which is
yeah.
great.
It is great.
Mm.
I went through a big phase of listening to country last year.
Mm.
I listened to a lot of country last year, right? But I specifically enjoyed like the cheesy early noughties stuff, right? Like a lot of
It's
like
amazing.
Rascal Flats and like Chris Cagle and who else? Miranda Lambert, like
Yeah.
Kerosene by Miranda Lambert is
Oh
an
my God.
unbelievable tune.
Yeah.
But like these were all just like songs and like over the years, like I think that I've really just kind of come up with like what I like about music, right? And what I
Yeah.
like about music, or what I specifically enjoy about songs, or what is a commonality in the songs that I enjoy
Yeah.
is there's songs with attitude about them,
Yeah.
right? And like a lot of those country songs have that level of attitude. Like Chris
Yeah.
Cagle singing about like running his car off like the road into a
Yeah.
ditch and having the book thrown at him by the judge because the
Exactly.
chicks dig it. Like
Yeah.
that's like that's an unbelievable little bit of bravado and attitude
Yeah.
associated with it. But equally, then you get like Miranda Lambert, not just doing like Kerosene, which comes from a place of like heated emotion, but also
Yeah.
singing songs of like um what is this? The House That Made Me,
Oh
by
yeah. Yeah.
which is a very, very somber, very sweet
Yeah.
ballad about
Mm.
like moving on from things in your past and like revisiting them, but also having to
Yeah.
leave them behind as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think country is an underrated genre, and as you
I
say,
do.
it is
Yeah.
nice to see it kind of be back on the rise.
Exactly. But
Um,
like I even saw like the people who are saying I don't like country music, we're listening to It's Not Fair by Lily Allen, and I'm like, that's just a country song, and like
Mm.
in a great way. And even like I love Take That. Take That are one of my favorite pop groups of all time. I hear the country influence because I'm not going to change my way of talking to you just because I'm telling you something in a song. We're going to say Let It Shine rather than coming up with something convoluted. It's the same way. If anyone sits down and hears Life is a Highway and does not tap their foot, it's
Soulless.
not right. They're soulless.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you hear that and don't just go like, yes, this is amazing.
Yeah,
It just, it hits you in the gut no matter what it is, whether it is someone singing, you know, kind of old 60s country about what's going on in their life, or again, Life is a Highway. It's just trying to connect with you on the deepest level.
And then you have Big and Rich.
Yeah. Come on.
It's Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, man. Anyway, yes. So then that's common country misconceptions. And then what's the concept of multiple dead ends then?
So multiple dead ends, the third L is loss, because
Okay.
I never want the concept albums to go on for too long. So this is my like L trilogy. Now I'm going to write about something else for a while. Might come back and revisit those stories, but for now, this is the trilogy of my first 3 albums. So obviously, when ending a story, you want to talk about the ending. Loss for me is something that like I've never been good with dealing with. I've been someone who's been panicking about growing old since I was like 6 years old.
Oh yeah, me too.
I would go into my parents' room at like 6 years old and be like, how can I afford like healthcare and how do I pay my taxes? And they're like, just play with your Nintendo, please play your Game Boy.
I didn't even have a Nintendo, man. Like I was waking up in the middle of the night in cold sweats, going downstairs to my parents, going like, "What? Okay, so what actually happens when you die?" And
That
like
was
my
mine
parents
too.
were like, "Listen, I don't know what to tell you, kiddo.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is that you're gonna be around a long time, and so will we." Right?
Yeah.
That's all it was, you know.
Exactly.
And I
And
still have that existential dread from time to time, you know.
I have it all the time. So that's why I made the album, is to kind of exercise those thoughts. And when I started it, when I came up with the L trilogy, I was like, perfect. And then the final album, I'll explain why growing old and death is so easy. And here's the answers to stories, which all songwriters think they have. When I started writing the album, I went, oh, I'm 3 years older and I still have no idea what the answers are. Hence the name Multiple Dead Ends. It is essentially me going through the process of grief in an album. I am bargaining on certain songs. I'm getting angry on certain songs. I am telling you what you're doing wrong on certain songs and what I'm doing on certain songs. But at the very end of the album, and some people have taken it as kind of like morbid or sad. I take it as like a great feeling that like at the end, no one knows what's going on. Let's just scream along. Let's just keep going. Let's move forward and go back to the very start. Why the album starts and ends with the same song in a different context is because this story will continue for the rest of my life. Whether I want it to or not, I'm going to be thinking about this album 10 albums down the line, or even on the next one where no one knows the answers, but that's also okay. It is good that there is multiple dead ends, because if there was an answer, we would all spend our lives searching for it.
I mean, you're right. I mean, people
Yeah.
will still spend their lives searching for it.
But that's the thing. I've come now, still have panics over it all the time, but I feel a lot more at peace being like, I've told everyone my deepest, darkest secrets. That's also why Peter and Rebecca are not on this album, because if I'm going to be this vulnerable with everyone, I don't want to have the best backing vocalists with me, and I don't want to have an accomplished piano player. I want to hit those piano notes myself. I want to hit the electric guitar notes myself and tell you, this is just me coming from the heart. No one wrote that awkward line on the second song because they thought it was better. It was all just coming directly from how I was feeling in the situation.
Yeah. It's a big concept.
Yeah.
For a record. And like, as you were kind of talking to me there about like it's ending the way that it starts, it kind of like, you know, Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Yeah.
Right. So you know the way the very end of that song ends with someone in the studio going, and then this very, very beginning of the album starts where we came in.
Yeah.
like it's a beautiful bookend, right,
Yeah.
to an album. And again, that talking about that cyclical nature. But really, what kind of gets me by is the understanding, and I think that you've covered this beautifully on the album,
Thank
was
you.
with the little things, right?
Yeah.
That finding meaning and enjoyment in the small things,
Yeah.
right? And understanding that, things aren't forever, so you
Yeah.
best enjoy while you're here, right?
Exactly.
And for myself, like I don't believe in any afterlife or anything like that, right? Which sometimes makes things a little bit more panicky as well. But equally, it offers me an awful lot of freedom, right?
Yeah.
Because that means that everything that you do has value and has weight, right,
Yeah.
behind it, right? And it has to, right? Because
Yeah.
you only have one go. And if
Exactly.
you've made the wrong decision, if you
Mhm.
have this is my show. If you fucked up, right, then you can go you can go back and you have to apologize, right?
Yeah.
Because or you have to make up for that. Because if you
Yeah.
don't, then sure, nothing's going to happen down the
Yeah.
line, but you're not going to be remembered particularly well by a lot of people. And that's kind of and maybe this is an egotistical element or a narcissistic element
Mhm.
in myself, but the idea of being remembered and being remembered well is very
Yeah.
important to me as well.
Of course.
Um, but the little things, I have a note down here about it that it comes across as though it's almost a Beatles song, right, in its composition.
Mhm.
And then I have a little asterisk on it. It's better than Now and Then anyway. But
No comment.
the highlights for
I'm
me
not
on
getting
it,
in trouble.
that's okay. That's okay. For me, the highlights are like Down, obviously. Like an awful lot of promotion was done for Down,
Yeah.
leading up to the album, like in the months leading up to the album.
Mhm.
The little things, as we mentioned, and the problem with everything. Is I really like that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Those are an interesting three because I guess they all show different sides of. They essentially are one song from each of the dead ends because Down is me trying to fight through it.
Hmm.
The Little Things is me kind of talking to the audience and telling them what I've learned. And just a side note on that, the reason it's so early in the album, and I was like talking to people where they're like, that should be the closer, you should have that end.
It kind of kills it.
If I ended with that, it would feel like I'm telling you this is the answer. Whereas having it so early in the album is like, I've done this many times. I can't talk about anyone else, but when I go to someone and I go, look, you're having a tough time, this is what you should do. And then the next day you're doing the exact same thing you told them not to do. Because we're
Mhm.
all, and I think that's a great thing that we're all hypocrites because we're all just trying our best to, like you said, I want to be remembered for doing good and for making music that some random kid on the bus goes, oh, he feels exactly how I feel about this situation.
Yeah.
So having the little things so early is my way of going, no, I don't have the answers either. And I'm about to get really angry on the next song. But then the problem with everything, that I'm so glad you like that. That's one I was shocked people were resonating with as much because probably the simplest and quickest song written on that album. I wrote it on holidays with my family and my girlfriend, and it was essentially just me being like, why am I still not able to relax? Why am I still panicking over all these situations?
Yeah.
And I think the placement of it in the album is also me kind of talking to that idea of like, you haven't learned anything throughout this entire album, and you're going to say again that you are the problem, but you're just going to have to work on it every day.
Man, that's the thing, right? Like, you can never guess what songs people are going to like or resonate with,
Yeah,
right? You can
100%.
absolutely never. Like, I've said this before, like to other people that like I have a song that took me like 15, 20 minutes to write. It's a couple of chords thrown together, right?
Yeah.
And like I threw the lyrics together, kind of as like almost like a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, I say a challenge. A mate of mine kind of said to me at the time that hey, I think that you should like this person that was in your life like really did a number on you. I
Mm.
think you should like write kind of like a real fuck you song
Yeah.
about that,
About
right?
that.
And I was like, I can't do that. I can't write a fuck you song. This is as close as I got, right?
Yeah.
This is the only song that I had written at that point in time that got people dancing, right? And like it's mental, right? Like
Yeah.
20 minutes, and then like these other songs that I put like a lot of time, a lot of effort into
Yeah.
like writing all the different parts, and they get applause, and
Mhm.
people are very polite about them, but people don't dance to them,
You just brought me on to a great point on that, like challenge writing as well. I was listening to, I don't know if you've ever heard This Whole World by the Beach Boys. It's a great song from like
I haven't.
later Brian Wilson catalog, but I was
I'm-
listening to it.
I was just going to say, like, later Brian Wilson's catalog is all mental. But yeah,
Oh,
okay.
this song is so crazy because, again, like you said, it took him allegedly like 5 minutes to write, but it has, and I'm not exaggerating, way too many chords in it. And I was listening just being angry that I couldn't write like that. So I just like gave myself a challenge. I was like, cool, I'm going to write a song with as many chords as possible. And it hilariously, like I just wrote out the chords. I was like, I'm going to use this chord and then move to this one and then this one. This song took about 5 minutes to write. When I had finished, I was so accomplished, but I was like, this is an album song. This is not one I want to play live. And since the album has came out, this song was Left Foot, Right Foot Panic.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most streamed and like people love it. So I'm like, oh no, I have to play this
I
at
have to play
every
this.
show. And there's way too many chords for my little hands.
Is this a price I have to pay for never knowing nothing I never know? Can we please take a break? Can I please have a break from this left foot, right foot panic? Forget to breathe or to move or to do anything that you wanted to do, like laugh or cry or have a coffee without thinking you're gonna die.
Man, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. Because I did see you tweet about that as well, about Left Foot, Right Foot Panic. That it has like four, like about four, not chord changes, but that's the
Key
one.
changes.
Yeah, it's changes of some variety. What's it? Key changes, four key
Yeah.
changes, in it. And I was like, why? You know, why?
And I was just
now I know.
angry. I was just angry at Brian Wilson. He's like one of my favorites, but a lot of the time I will listen to an album and love it and afterwards be like, I'm so annoyed they wrote this song before I got the chance to. And it
Man.
might be like 50 years old.
You gotta let that go. You gotta let that go, isn't there?
Wow.
Man.
But it made me write more. So like I think I like to write
Yeah.
from both the angry side and the happy side. Like I'll sit down and be like, you know what? I'm never gonna write like this artist, but I'll write my own. Again,
I mean,
no
look,
set formula.
if it works for you and
Yeah.
it keeps you productive, sure. Right. but equally at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm kind of like, I mean, look, I've got 10 years on you, and I'm not like, oh, you whippersnapper or anything like that, right? This is how you do life, right? But
Mhm.
like everything works for different people, and I don't
Exactly.
think that I could write that way, right? Because
I
even
get you.
you know, when I was talking a moment ago about my mate who was like, you need to write this "fuck you" song, and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm very polite about this "fuck you" though, right?
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
you know, I
Mhm.
was like, I think the most cutting lyric that I have is you've got your cat and I've got my life, and I've got a girlfriend who I'll gladly make my wife.
Dang.
Yeah, that was the
Wow.
most cutting part of it, I think. But yeah, come here. Before we wrap up, and you've been
Mhm.
very generous with your time already, but
No problem.
you mentioned earlier about starting singing at 17,
Mhm.
because you mentioned that in an interview
Mhm.
before this one, but also it's mentioned in This Is Not What I Was Promised.
Mhm.
So when did the guitar come along?
They're very quick together. So I always thought I was going to be a sports star. Always thought I was going to be great at like soccer or rugby or something. Turns out terrible at every sport. But one day in school, they were just like, "Oh, we need someone to sing." I think it was "Hey Ho" by the Lumineers for like
Yeah.
this school project thing. And messingly, I put my hand up, and the teacher was like, "You know what? Come up here and sing it." And I was like, "Oh God, no, please, no." Never sung before in my life. Sung it, sounded atrocious, but people liked it. And this girl came up to me and was like, "That was amazing." And I was like, "Oh, is it?" And then said, "Okay, I want to get into singing." Immediately, my mom, who's incredible judge of this kind of stuff, saw that, oh, this might be something he'll be good at. Was like, why don't you learn an instrument as well? went to guitar lessons for about 2 months, I think, to learn enough chords, and immediately just started writing. Like that
It's
was my
always the way.
first, but that was my first love. I didn't love playing other people's songs. I would play them just to learn the chords, but the minute I could play a C chord and write my own lyric to say how I was feeling that week, I was like, oh, this is no longer about that girl or about attention or about anyone else. This is all I ever want to do,
Yeah,
ever, is write music.
I'm very similar,
Really.
in the sense that like learning other people's songs are vehicles to technique, right?
Yeah.
Or vehicles to opening up knowledge, right?
Mhm.
They aren't like I'm shit at parties, you know.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my God.
someone hands you a guitar at a party, I'm like, I don't know any I don't know any
Yeah.
party songs. Like I know songs that, you know, they use
Helped
this
me
chord
learn
structure
finger
and this is kind
picking.
of
Yeah.
interesting, right? But like this is not a good party song.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
I'm the most introverted like person when it comes to that. People are so confused by it because at parties they'll even now that like people like my music, they're like, play one of your songs. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I don't have it in me to be able to play music unless it's like a show. Because at a show, I know the people who are there to see me.
it's
Otherwise, I feel
yeah,
like I'm taking up someone else's time.
it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
That like when you play a show, no one's there to see you fail,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
the thing is, like when you're at a party or when you're with people, with family and friends, like they're not
Mhm.
there to see you fail either, right? But
No.
it's different. It
Yeah.
feels different.
It's
Um,
even, I have such a respect for buskers. Anyone who can busk, I have so much respect because that's just something in me that I've never had the ability to do. And I just like watch it in awe, like just be like,
mm,
hell yeah, take as much money as you can because I'm going to give you everything I can because I'm living vicariously through you, watching you sing for anyone who will listen.
yeah, like I've done it before, but I haven't particularly enjoyed it, which is
Okay.
weird, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like I do have that like that narcissistic tendency within myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I've been like the singer in bands before, right?
Hmm.
And just singing, right?
Hmm.
And what I loved about that was that you have that freedom to move around the stage. You have that
Hmm.
freedom to dance a little
Yeah,
bit, to enjoy yourself, to engage with people in the crowd, right? And to like, you
exactly.
know, to gesture at people and you're like, you're my guy, right? You find one people who's tapping their foot and it's like, that's the person that I'm now linked with, right?
Yeah,
These songs are for you now, right? And then you
exactly.
get them in and they get people in and
Hmm.
then it's like, now you're all my guys, right? And that
Exactly.
kind of thing, right? You really kind of build that.
Hmm.
And you can do that without having a guitar between you and them. Because
Yeah.
I was at a party recently. I say recently, it was months ago.
Hmm.
That I played a little bit of guitar at, and I was messing up because I was singing as well, right? And granted, I had a couple of adult beverages, but but then a friend of mine was like, "Do you know the chords to this song?" I was like, "I can pull them up real quick." So I pulled them up real quick, and she sang it, and I just played guitar, and I was like, "Wow, playing music is so much easier when you just have to do one thing."
You're preaching to the choir. You're
Yeah,
preaching to the one guy who like has to have an instrument at all times playing. It's so, and it is so relaxing to be able to be like, I am just doing this instrument or I am just singing.
mhm.
It's so much easier to do kind of more with yourself and the crowd. That's why like at my shows, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do about 60 to 70% songs and then about 30% talking slash poor comedy because I love that side of shows. Whereas I feel like if I didn't have an instrument, I'd be able to incorporate that more into the songs themselves and the live show.
Yeah.
But it's all
This,
give and take, really.
when you play live, you play on your own, right?
Yeah, I
Have
love acoustic shows and I love just kind of almost evening with kind of shows where it's I'm gonna tell you the story of these songs. I'm gonna make jokes based on like moments that happen in the crowd or people talking back to me. I love stand-up comedy as well, so I kind of
mm,
like that kind of mixture, especially because a lot of my songs are very heavy, so having the joke in between kind of
yeah,
stops people from that moment and then I think it makes it easier to resonate. I've always found it easier to resonate with like sad songs if someone's very honest in the in between moments rather than like finishes sad song. This song is called blank, goes
yeah,
into
yeah,
next sad song. You're like,
yeah, yeah,
oh, this is a lot.
yeah, yeah. It's like, you know, we're Sex for Bomb and we're here to make you feel sad and stuff, right? That kind
Yeah,
of thing,
exactly.
right? Um, have you thought about playing with a band to kind of have that little bit more freedom to have that conversation with people, and to emote directly to people? Like even to the idea of, giving up guitar
Yeah.
to in a live show
Mm.
setting, or outsourcing a
Um,
second guitar.
I have thought about it for very brief moments, but
Mm.
my joy comes from everything being that controlled chaos.
Sure.
Me being in control of every instrument, me being able to, like, if someone hoops or makes a joke during one of the songs, to be able to hold that chord for a little while and make a remark back to the crowd, or be able to move with the crowd, because I love live bands, and don't get me wrong, there will come a day where I'm playing with a full band on stage,
Mm.
and that's amazing. But at the moment, I just like the spontaneity of being able for the crowd to not go, this is rehearsed. Like,
Yeah.
with a full band, I have to write out the set list beforehand. With my own shows, again, I have rules even for live shows. I have never played the same set list twice. The songs have never been in the same order. There has to be a new
Sure.
song added or a song taken away, or even like I play at least one cover every hour show, so it's a new cover every night, because even though it might not have someone from the last show, I don't want them coming and going, oh, he's just giving the show that he gave in London. He's just
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
what he
yeah.
did then. I want every moment to feel exciting and different. And that's kind of harder with a band, because if a band's traveling over on the bus or on the plane, they're not going to have time to learn the cover that you just heard yesterday. And so you want to play at the show tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But I definitely will play with bands, but I think I will always have my majority time spent touring be me and only me, because I am, like all musicians, partly a narcissist. I like being in control of every detail.
Yeah, we're kind of control freaks as well.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Like even when I've been in bands,
Yeah,
like control is always something that is
yeah,
it's wrestled with,
yeah,
amongst your different members of the band,
exactly.
and it always feels like there's like a little bit of, I suppose, um, reserved politeness that is exchanged, between
100%.
between members, rather than being
Yeah,
like, oh well, I want us to do this,
yeah,
right? Which I often think isn't necessarily the best approach to take, because
yeah.
if everyone does that, then
Hmm.
nothing gets done, right? So it needs
Yes.
someone involved to actually like take the reins. But anyway, tell me about touring, right? So you've toured around the UK and Ireland, and you're
Hmm.
looking to tour in the US.
Hmm. So I've really enjoyed touring. Touring is like huge for me, because I love getting to go and just find new people, show them my songs, and just get new stories. Like, I love every detail of touring. I always laugh at this part, but I love like cheap hotel rugs. You know, when you're like, or
Oh
carpets. You know, when
yeah.
you're walking into a hotel and you're like, this carpet looks like the old bus
Oh
airing,
yeah.
like
The
bus
seats on
seats,
the
and you're
bus.
like,
Yeah.
it gives me so much joy. I love the travel side of it. I love finding new people and new stories. So like, yeah, I've played a lot of England, and then a lot of Ireland as well, both in like a support capacity and headline shows. It's
Mm.
so different, the kind of crowds you get for each, because I love the challenge at a support show of being like, I am going to prove to these people that they made the right decision coming 30 minutes early to the show.
Ah,
I am going to
yeah.
show them their new favorite artist. Whereas with headline shows, even if it is somewhere I haven't been before, I'm able to go, all right, I'm going to give you a full night you're never going to forget. I don't want you just to go, I want to buy the CD, but I want you to go, I want to go see him the next time, because I hope he makes a joke like the joke he made between Hey Bartender and Down, or I want to hear him like tell a story in the middle of a song like he did at Left Foot Right Foot.
Mm. It's interesting. Like
Mm.
over the course of this conversation, like maybe you should have played some sports, right? Because it seems as though you're quite competitive, with
Oh,
yourself.
100%. I am
Right?
like one of the most competitive people you will ever meet. I have my little brother and sister, love them to bits. My sister is a good bit younger than me. if we're playing Mario Kart or we're playing
Hey, look,
any
Mario
game,
Kart's its whole thing. It's its own
it
thing.
doesn't matter the game. If I beat them 5 times in a row and they're like, please let me win this one, I'm like, okay.
Listen, man, my
It
niece is
never
8 years
happens.
old. I'm destroying my niece at Mario Kart every time, right? That's
Yeah.
just how it goes, right? But like, it sounds like everything becomes a challenge somewhat, right? That
Yeah.
you've created for yourself, right? That you're trying to prove something,
Yeah.
in some ways, right? Not necessarily like you've got something to prove, right? But
Yeah.
more along the lines of like you're trying to prove that it can be done.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think that comes again from kind of my family's mentality. Like my granddad is a fisherman, and my dad is in construction. With their jobs, they kind of just went, "I'm going to do it because I can do it, and this is what I want to do." Like they both love their jobs, and I kind of look at what they do. Like my granddad fishes because he loves it, so it was his challenge to be like, "This is what I can do to provide for my family. I want to do this. I could
Sure.
get a job somewhere else. I could do something else, but I want to prove that this can be done." So watching them do that kind of gave me that mentality of if someone tells you no, do it anyways. So like the big thing was get a band, get a label, get a studio, and every one of them I went, no, not going to do it. I'm going to do it my own way. The whole reason that I have long hair now is because someone said long hair wouldn't suit you, so I grew my hair. Like it's down to everything, but I feel like I like that competitive nature in me because it's a very honest one. It's not a because I can be competitive about these things. If someone comes to me and is like, I got more streams than you, I'm like so proud. I'm so happy. It's so cool to see them do good. I don't have a competitive nature when it comes to other musicians. I have
Sure.
it only with myself because I'm comfortable in myself now.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like everything that we've talked about, as I said, it seems as though it's a challenge that you've created for yourself. Like I've never kind of, again, based on this conversation that we've had, at any time have I gotten the sense that you were challenged by or felt like, oh, this guy's doing this, right?
Exactly.
Or whatever, right? Now I do think that there are musicians out there who do kind of pull up the ladder a little bit behind themselves.
100%.
But like I feel as though, again, based on social media interaction and based on the conversation that we've had here, that you're the kind of guy that, like you don't care about playing support, right? Because playing support, as you say, is another challenge for you, right?
Exactly.
To kind of prove to people that, show up half an hour early, you'll get a show.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas in music, you can drive yourselves nuts with like things like that being like on Instagram or something, be like, this person got a show that I wanted, or this person got this. Whereas I do feel rising tide lifts all boats. So if I get a show in a venue that I know someone else wants to play, I'll bring them in on support. Like with my first and second show, or my first and second album launches in Cork, I made sure to find Cork musicians who I love their music. First off, I will always need to like have some love of their music, whether it's a different genre or not. But the main thing was to me was they've not gotten a chance. It wasn't I'm bringing my friends in. It was this person's good. I need people to hear them so that they can then move on. And if they turn around, now I've been very lucky, but if they turned around and went, you gave me the show, now I'm going to move on from you. I'm not going to talk to you ever again. I'm going to move up the ladder. Good for them. That makes me happy because at least to me, they still got
something, right?
Yes, but the competitive nature in me still goes, I helped. That makes me happy. That makes me happy that at least I was able to give something to someone else. Right? Exactly. Even if I'm an unused footnote, it's still, of course, I can know it. And I can go, I helped someone.
And that comes back to the idea of multiple dead ends, where you have
contributed
something, right?
Yeah.
You've contributed. You will be well remembered for the action that you took, regardless of the outcome, right? Last two things from me, and then I'll let you go and have dinner. So I apologize for taking more time. So you have a new album, 50% Complete, that's due out later this year?
Yes, I do.
Why? You just released an album.
Well, you know what? I could probably talk about it now. So it won't really be an album, a studio album. It's something, a passion project I've been working on for a while that isn't necessarily part of the 3 albums that I've released, but it's a here's a nice little bow, sail off to sea moment for those 3 albums, where I'm just kind of going, this is almost the end credits of that situation. Again, I don't have that in me where I go, well, release schedule dictates that this song has to come out at this point.
100%.
I don't release singles or release albums in a certain way going, this will market better. I release it in a way of, I'm telling the story, giving you the hints before it comes out. Here's the album. Because I'm not someone who can sit on a record for a year and a half, because it makes more sense to bring it out in quarter 3.
Oh,
I'm just like, this is how I'm feeling now. Here you go. I'm moving on to the next thing.
like the whole thing of like waterfall method and that kind of thing. Like I can't be doing that. Like I just want to record an album and release an
Yeah.
album, please and thanks.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't ever get heated when I see Twitter discussions about things, but one that kind of annoyed me was someone saying that albums don't exist anymore. You should only be
Oh, yeah.
releasing singles,
I saw that too.
which
Yeah.
totally get, because there's some artists I love who have only released singles. I'm totally down for that as a concept, but don't tell me that I can't release albums, because I'm much more happy seeing a physical version of my album, a cassette or a CD in my hand that I can hold, than going, well, I brought out 10 singles and I have 7 more Facebook followers. Like,
And nobody has bought that single, I guarantee it.
yeah,
right?
100%.
Like I have hundreds of albums downstairs on vinyl, like in a cabinet, right?
Yeah.
I've got like 3 singles, right, on vinyl.
Yeah.
Right? Like people don't buy singles, right? Similarly, you know, I think that you mentioned this before about again on Twitter, which is where I did a massive deep dive through a lot of your tweets.
Thank
But
you for
mentioned,
calling it Twitter, by the way, and not X.
oh man, I'm gonna
Appreciate
be
that.
dead. I'm gonna be cold in my grave before I start to call it X, man. You know?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, so on Twitter, I thought I saw that you mentioned about people going to your shows and they buy something. They will listen to that, right?
Yeah.
They will buy or they buy an album on cassette or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They will listen to it. But
Yeah.
if they're like, oh, I'll check you out on Spotify, like they're never gonna listen to you on Spotify.
Exactly.
Right?
And they
You
might
think-
listen once, they might listen to one song, but it'll go into a playlist that they don't remember which playlist it was. Is it in the July one? Is it in the August playlist? Whereas having the physical piece, they can go, you know what? I haven't listened to this in ages. I might give them another chance. And it might
Or-
resonate better in the winter.
Also, I remember that show. That was a good show. I should give this a listen again.
Exactly.
Anyway, I'll look forward to that. So it's not really an album. How many tracks are we talking? Can you give me the scoop on that?
Cannot give the scoop on that yet, because I
Okay.
have some stuff coming later this month about it. If this interview happened like in 4 weeks' time, I'd be happy to tell everything, but
That's fine.
I
That's
gotta
fine.
wait for now.
That's no bother. Last thing. Again, I saw a tweet from you talking about using the highest string on a bass guitar and not knowing what it was for, or never using the highest string. I
Yeah.
used it the other day. It sounds quite pleasant, and it does in fact exist.
I'm so happy you brought that up. It genuinely, you're starting to scare me with the scoops, because I am working on the next actual album at the moment. I'm like a couple of songs deep into that. That is a scoop for here. I'm a couple of songs deep into the next actual album, and for the first time ever, I used that string and it sounded so pretty. And I was like, oh, I have been missing out on this for
You
so
have been
many
missing out.
years.
You have.
Oh my God, it's so pretty. It's so nice.
Do you pluck or do you pick a bass?
Common country, all plucking, because again, I was like country style, got to do the plucking.
Yep.
With multiple dead ends. I was listening to every single Paul McCartney bass, so picks,
Pick.
lots
Yeah.
of picks. I don't, again, still back to the start of the conversation, I don't like the idea that you have to do something a certain way, so I will pick, I will pluck, I will do every style in between.
I've been trying to get good at the thumb through slap, but I can't quite get there. But I'll give it some more practice. But it's a completely different sound. It's pretty great. I bring that up because I recorded a cover of Joe Dolan's "Make Me an Island"
Nice.
the other day, and
Oh.
I put the bass line on it using like only the 2 low or higher strings on the bass, and it sounds pretty sweet.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. That sounds cool.
Anyway, Podge Lane, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you giving up so much of your time. It's been nearly an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes or
Wow.
so. It's flown by.
Been a
Thank
joy.
you for everything, for all the chats. And based on the America thing, looking to play America in the near future, I have some friends in America that play in Buffalo,
Oh wow.
in different bands. So I can give you their contact details if you'd like.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it.
But anyway, I will leave it there. As I say, go have your dinner, and I look forward to the new Not album and the new album coming out.
Yes.
If people want to hear more of your stuff, they can find you pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere, Podge Lane on every single social, every single streaming site, every single Russian bootleg website, anything you want.
Cool. I have also added a number of your tracks to the Sonic Chronicle highlights playlist as well.
Thank you.
So if people want to get a taste of some of my highlights of your 3 albums, well, 4, I guess, if you call cover People Break, one of those albums, there's stuff on there as well. But yes, thank you so much for your time. I've much appreciated, and I will be in touch when this is going up.
It's been a pleasure, genuinely. Thank you so much for everything.
No worries.